Hey Grauwelt fans, and welcome to the Grauvlog episode 4. On the last episode we talked about formulating a prologue and kind of using a prologue to foreshadow what was going to happen in the novel. And as I'm starting to write the second Grauwelt book, I've now gotten in my draft up to the 5th chapter out of 47 that my current draft has. I'm getting into setting up the themes for this next installment, and the big hook, just like with the first Grauwelt book, was the question of like a moral dilemma. The protagonist has to have some kind of moral quandary or challenge to overcome. And that to me is the real antagonist. The antagonist isn't so much, the villains with weapons and armies and supernatural capabilities. It's really the protagonist's own internal struggle. Their own mind is essentially the greatest enemy, whether they can overcome their fears and overcome doubts and uncertainty about what they're actually doing in the story. And we see moral dilemma really clearly in the first Grauwelt book with the protagonist Ainsa, who is continually bombarded by temptations to use violence against her oppressors, if you will. The sort of juxtaposition of whether she can get away safely. She has a lot of opportunities to just run away and evade her enemies without causing harm to either side. But then she's constantly falling to the temptation of, well, if I kill them, I won't have to worry about them at a later date. So if I, eliminate these villains, I won't ever have to worry about them again. So maybe I should work on exterminating them, and then they won't be a problem, and I won't have to worry about trying to run away from them in the future. And that moral dilemma, to me, honestly strikes at something really, primordial inside all living things, is that sort of fight or fly response. If we think that we're, outnumbered, outgunned, we have a tendency to want to run away. But then I think there's a temptation in all of us, even us human beings, that if we can somehow gain the advantage on the enemy, we'll use that advantage to, defeat them. And that doesn't necessarily mean, through force of arms. It doesn't necessarily mean that, we'll prey upon the weak and kill them, although that certainly is the case in some instances and certainly was the case, historically, like a long time ago in ancient times. And that's really the purpose of setting up a moral dilemma. You should give your readers this kind of struggle that they can identify with. Not, and many of us, I hope none of us can identify with having to kill someone in combat, but we can all identify with that kind of like darker temptation, and we should be able to put ourselves in the protagonist's shoes and think like, okay, well, I'm in this situation where if I don't kill them, they might be able to kill me. Am I actually going to do it? Would I, the reader, given those, fantastical circumstances, would I do this? And I think that if the author can make a good case that you should do this and that you would do something in this circumstance that you wouldn't do normally, I think that the author is doing his job. And I don't know about you guys, but I like to be challenged like that. I have very strong convictions, very strong beliefs about what I believe to be right or wrong, as I think most of us do. And I like to be put in situations in books or in movies or in conversations where it's like a kind of would you rather scenario, and then you just, you get your moral foundations challenged. You start to question, am I right? Could I be wrong? Is this book or movie or conversation like breaking down my entire conception of reality and what it means to be a human being? As I'm writing the second Grauwelt book, the moral dilemma will continue with our protagonist Ainsa, with the other character sort of on her side, if you will, Klein, if you've read the first one. And so she's still going to have to choose to embrace, Klein's point of view, which is violence and, sort of like genocidal extermination on the one hand, and then her own inner conscience, which is to, not cause harm to anything, just get away if it's at all possible so that there's no retaliatory effects. She doesn't want to keep feeding the cycle of violence on violence. She wants to break it once and for all. And, maybe she started to realize that that's not possible. So that's definitely going to continue as a theme in the second one. I don't see it as a problem right now. Again, I'm only on chapter 5 out of 47 that I have in my outline. But the challenge in this one comes from keeping that moral dilemma fresh and new and not stagnating. So I have to kind of put the protagonist in these new scenarios that don't look like the old ones, to where she has to continually choose between, one side or another, or maybe, comes up with a third option. So the challenge is not coming up with new scenarios, but it's making them feel like you haven't seen this before, and it's posing that same question, that same binary choice in a new light. I'm going to end this video by asking you guys which one of those you would choose. If you were put in a situation where you have the power to kill an enemy who if you let go will come back around and try to kill you at a later time. It could be the next second when you let him go, it could be tomorrow, it could be a year later, but in your heart that if you let this enemy go, they will try everything to destroy you, and you have the power to destroy them now. Which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Grauwelt channel. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.